Something that I think a lot of people deal with universally is trauma and having a past that they don't like. And I certainly have been through some stuff that I don't like, but I've been able to use it for my own benefit and actually become better because of some of the struggles that I've been through. And I wanted to tell you guys the mindset that I have that has allowed me to do that. I think a lot of people who say they have trauma are still suffering from it. So I'm going to be careful when I say this because I don't want to say that trauma is bad, because trauma is bad, but I don't want to say that like saying that you have trauma is bad, because I know PTSD is a real thing, and I definitely don't want to go down that route because I know that, medically it's a real thing for a lot of people, but I'm talking specifically to the people who call more normal things trauma, like being cheated on. Like that's such a difficult thing to go through, but that's the level I'm going to be talking about today. That kind of trauma, like, oh, I've been cheated on, whatever. And I think a lot of people who say they have trauma are still acting as victims. And when you say you have trauma, you're basically saying that you haven't gotten over it. Because if you're like, oh man, I have trauma in this area, that's a touchy subject. You haven't gotten over it yet. You haven't healed. You haven't learned. So the best way that I've been able to deal with my own trauma is by simply not calling it trauma. Because if you call it trauma, then you give power to it. And when you give power to it, you're controlled. And being controlled is what leads to the negative emotions that you feel like you can't control. So to beat trauma, you simply have to stop giving it power and simply stop calling it trauma. And the best way that I've been able to do this is to simply say that this thing in my past did not happen to me. It happened for me. And so when you say that, when you change that language, it's not even trauma anymore altogether. You can't even call it trauma if it's something that happened for you. Because trauma is bad. It affected you. It's something happening to you that you can't control. That's trauma that lives with you. But if you switch the mindset to saying, this happened for me instead of happened to me, then it's actually now not trauma. It's a lesson. And you can simply just have it as a lesson that you can learn from. And guess what? If you learn from it, you got smarter, you got more wise, and eventually you would have healed from the trauma. So, for example, when I hear people talk about, oh yeah, I have trouble trusting people because I got cheated on one time, so I have trauma. Well, you are playing as a victim to the trauma. I hate to say it like that, but that's literally what it is. You're calling it trauma because you're choosing not to heal from that. But if you were to change that trauma into a lesson where you say, okay, I got cheated on, that hurt a lot. Instead of saying, I have trauma from that, you can say, okay, I'm not going to date somebody like that. That's how you can change that trauma into a lesson. Or, I'm going to grow as a person so that I don't attract people who will cheat on me. Again, using the trauma as a lesson instead. So if you can simply just change your language and change how you mentally view trauma and use it as something that you can learn from, then you're going to be free forever. That'll be your first taste of freedom, is when you can change your trauma into a lesson. For example, I witnessed a person close to me in my childhood deal with alcoholism, basically the addiction to alcohol. And I could be like everyone else and say, yeah, I have trauma. I don't like going to parties around people who drink because it gives me anxiety because I have trauma. But I don't say that because I don't view it like that. I view going through that as a lesson. And that is why I don't drink alcohol and I don't go to parties. Because I just don't want to fall into that trap that I learned from my childhood. Instead of saying, ooh, I have trauma. Like, I don't have trauma. Because I learned from it and I have a lesson that I can carry forward to my kids and my friends and my future partner. That's a very simple example in my life where I've turned my trauma into a lesson to the point where it's not even trauma that I suffer from anymore. It's literally just something I learned from that allows me to be a better man and make better choices in my day-to-day life. Sure, it led to kind of a lackluster and boring at times college experience when I was in college because I didn't drink and go out, but I stayed healthy, I stayed sharp, and I stayed true to myself. And that was worth it for me. So, in short, to deal with trauma, and again, I want to make it very clear that I'm not trying to downplay anybody's trauma. I think a lot of people have really bad trauma, like probably bad trauma that I could never comprehend. But that's your trauma. That is your thing. I am not there to tell you what to do, but I can give you some advice on stuff that I've been through about how to deal with said trauma and try to use it not as trauma, but as a lesson. That is what I'm saying. It's your trauma to deal with. I'm not downplaying anything. But I will say the best thing you can do for yourself is to use the trauma to be a lesson that you can learn from, because at least that way it serves you. That's all I'm saying. And I hope this helps you, and thank you for watching.